All right. I see the countdown or the count up. So we must be live. So welcome to actually the reunion tour. The band gets back together. I don't know. But here we are. Eric, John, Brock talking about nerdy stuff again. Just like old times.
That's great.
Word.
So what are we talking about today, gentlemen? Teams? Organizational headwind?
Yeah.
Yes.
We can always. I can always talk about Microsoft Teams and how bad it is.
We're not talking about Microsoft Teams.
Oh, okay. Good.
But I was thinking of the essay. I think it's like a slide deck, right? It's a presentation called "Organizational Headwind," which we've all read now. Just about why there's more effort to coordinate large teams. And that's not because there's someone, there's not like a saboteur trying to sabotage the large teams. It's hard to do. So thoughts? What do you guys think of that essay? I keep calling it essay. It was a slide deck.
Yeah.
What do you think of it?
I'll let John go first.
Well, I thought it was brilliantly presented. The thing that stuck out to me the most about it was that somebody had put out a slide deck that was entirely self-contained and it was like a grown-up's, picture book. I think there's honestly in the information age when our attention is shattered in 100 different directions at any given point, being able to walk somebody through a concept or a complex idea like that in such a concise and enjoyable way. I think I'm going to steal that. I'll just say that first. And along that path, I think I saw there's a lot of ideas that were well presented that I've seen other places, mostly from the realm of systems thinking. And some other stuff in there that reminded me of Jessica Kerr's work on Semathicity, which I feel like we've seen, like you guys have seen before.
If I have, I've forgotten. Refresh my memory.
So there was a presentation that she did, and it began with like a whole thing about the Renaissance and how, like the Renaissance, the general theory that the Renaissance actually happened because people stopped drinking beer and started drinking coffee, but they were drinking coffee together in these coffee houses. And that caused sort of a melding of minds. There were some individuals that stood out during the period, but what really happened was that those individuals were an expression of what the groups around them were already doing. So I think that's that's the notion of a semathicity, is that you can't have like an individual, even if it appears that there's a rock star on your team, that person is doing what they're doing because of their environment, not because they independently are this whole process themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do remember this now because I remember, there have been other studies on this idea that great ideas, there's always this confluence of thinking kind of supporting each other's ideas, challenging each other's ideas. And so you almost see good ideas clumped throughout history. Mm-hmm. Athens being one of the famous, why is it that of the ancient world, you have this one city where we have all of these really good ideas that have stood the test of time. And not geographic, right? Because it's not like Athens continues to be a thought capital of the world. No offense, Athens. Right, but you have
our entire Athens segment of our audience.
Gary Goldman's like, they had all their good ideas, and what have they given us the last couple hundred years? A salad? Come on, Greeks.
But actually, Athens was a major port of like marketplace back in the day, and there was like 8 or 10 other ports and cities that were large that kind of helped build it up and kind of make something that is not too remote or different from what we have now with like New York and London and all the other ones on the oceans.
But I do like the idea, John, of we have microcosms of that in our teams. Like if you see someone really doing a good job, that probably means there's other people that are challenging them, that are refining them, that are clearing out the other work, maybe doing the work that goes uncredited or unseen so that someone can really step up and work unencumbered.
Yeah. Yeah. And that there's kind of a golden rule of coaching a team that I've picked up. And that's when you see a bad behavior on somebody's part. This is kind of the inverse of what you're saying. When you see somebody behaving badly, they are similarly expressing the system of people around them. Now that could also, it might be the team they're working with at work, but it also might be the people that they go home to in their family. Something in that person's life has stirred up this expression of behavior. I think in our culture, there's a lot of weight on individual responsibility. And in fact, it almost sounds scary if I suggest that we're not responsible for our own behavior, but we're less, I think, responsible for our own behavior than we like to think we are. And that systems express themselves through individuals.
I agree. There's a lot. I feel like humans and personalities are very much products of their environment. And in the book that hopefully I'll be covering some part of the chapter sometime soon, talks a lot about specifically that and having the and recognizing that the way that you organize is creates the end product. So if you have a bad organization or an inefficient organization, people are going to keep going and you're going to be making progress. You're just not going to be making the progress that you think you could be. And it is incumbent on someone to recognize that and be able to put forth the change that's needed to not the coerce is not the right word, but that ends up being, I feel, what the outcome is.
Well, that's the trouble. That the whole Headwind slideshow was pointing out is that this is not the doing of one person or some cabal of managers somewhere. This is just how larger organizations of humans congeal. And these are the natural forces of everybody rolling out of bed with the best of intention and getting together and working together and sort of things that naturally happen. So to change that is that's not the job of one person either.
Yeah, it is. It's an emergent phenomena out of a large group of people, and once they started talking about complex adaptive systems, like they had me. They started talking about like slime mold early on, but for better or worse, they didn't dive into why slime mold and complex adaptive systems kind of go together. And I feel like that was kind of a miss and something that the author assumed that you already knew about. So
it is also possible, Brock, that you are far more emotionally invested in how complex adaptive systems work. And the authors are like, no one's going to care about the details of this. No one wants to know how a group of organisms aggregate their decisions into a meta decision.
But you know what they love? Slime.
No, they like food, and the slime likes to grow efficiently toward the resources. But anyhow, I
was just thinking about Double Dare, you guys.
Yeah.
Oh man.
So
that was a laugh and sigh of three guys that are all just about the same age.
That moment of nostalgia, like how much do we come out and say that, yeah, we really liked watching that.
But it's back to team dynamics.
Yeah.
I think there is a skill that you can have on a team of fostering a place where all the decisions or all the opinions get heard. You know, there's very much a skill to empowering the entire team. How do you make it an environment where the most recent addition to the team or the youngest member of the team, you know, feels like they have a voice? Because you need their voice challenging you. You need their ideas. If you just have a whole bunch of silos that have to be in the same place, you won't get that network of ideas that it is the breeding ground for innovative concepts.
Yeah. So you mentioned silos. That makes me think, like, when you say, you know, how do you do this? Well, what are the forces that are stopping that from happening naturally? What are the forces in this case that are stopping the noobs on the team from being heard, from having a voice? You know, and starting with that, let's observe the system that already exists.
Yeah, I think part of like the motivation is, and Daniel Pink in his book Drive talks about this a lot, that like you really need three things. God, I have my fingers in it because I'm not sure. Autonomy, mastery, and purpose. And all three of those are things that you can squash out of people really, really easily. And to get people into the mode that they can actually recognize and see and kind of self-actualize, like, yeah, I'm going to go make this decision. Nobody told me to, but this falls underneath my role or something that I'm passionate about, and I'm going to go follow that. And I feel like that's that type of like empowerment, like might not be the direction that like you as a leader might expect, but there's going to be weird things that come up that they might solve before you have even thought of it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that takes us to, you know, where what we've got is you know, the remnants of an industrial system where the manager's job was to break up the work and give it to the workers.
Yeah.
And there's still a lot of that subconsciously in play.
Yes.
And, you know, and when I say observe the system that already exists, that means calling that out. That means like highlighting that because it's invisible. It's so pervasive. You know, they might read a book on leadership or being a great manager and then just go right back to, well, I've just got to give this work to the team and make sure they get it done and whip them until they get it done. They see something like autonomy, mastery, and purpose, and they're not sure how that fits with what they think their job is. And if we could just turn that notion, like first call it out,
Mhm.
make it visible, but then give them something to replace it with. Like your job is to create an environment, not to, parse work.
Definitely. Yeah, I like that. That is definitely something that I feel is missing, and I feel like a lot of business schools are set up to only reinforce the industrial, hierarchy and leading down. Your boss bestows upon you your work, and once that is done, you go back and he bestows more upon you, and it doesn't have to be that way. I was just talking with somebody who was in an MBA class, and he the professor said that IT people were mindless drones that had to be told and handheld every moment of the day because they are not smart enough to do any kind of work. And I'm paraphrasing, but
Sure. Yeah. I'm mentally translating that to like these people just want to type code. They're not emotionally intelligent enough to talk about the details of the work or anything like that.
or be able to solve a problem. They want someone else to solve the problem for them, and then they will just go implement it.
Just give me the requirements so I can make the
code. Which is true for some IT departments. The people in those departments have been beaten down so many times, and they have gotten all the creative juices beaten out of them, and to the point where they don't know how to function. It's become a what is it? Something about helplessness.
Learned helplessness.
Yeah, learned helplessness.
Yeah. Well, there's also something to be said, but both the beaten down IT worker and the manager who wants to continue to just parse work. In both of those cases, you're talking about a choice between work that's defined and straightforward and work that is creative and sort of blank canvasy. And one of those is emotionally scary and the other one is not. And so you tend to resist the thing that's less defined because you don't know if there's a treat on the other end of that, or there might be, you might get a shock collar buzz on that one, Yeah, it's just we want our certainty, we want our instructions, because that alleviates us of responsibility for the outcome.
Absolutely.
I think one of the warning signs of a team that does that is the phrase "not my problem." Right? I think it's like one of those red flags. If you're on a team and someone's like, "Oh, that's not my problem." Okay, if it's the team's problem, it's your problem. And that doesn't necessarily mean that everyone on the team needs to put down what they're doing and go address it. Although they might, right? There might be a team decision to be, to say, okay, we're going to divide this up, and we're going to take a pair of people and they're going to go fix that. But there's almost this mentality that you see sometimes that is beaten into people. Like, no, we have someone that does that. We have someone that does that. Okay, well, there's this big error on our application right now, and there's someone else for that, so I'm not going to worry about it. And I haven't heard it's not my problem in those specific words, but I think this shows up much more maybe insidiously in other ways. I've heard
silence.
Well, I've got, what'd you say?
Silence.
Silence, yeah, often silence. Because speaking up puts you in the spotlight. That makes you emotionally, or you're on the hook for that thing now that you've spoken up. But I guess what I was imagining is the the scenario of commitment. I've committed to getting this work done, my work, and then somebody else on the team has an issue that comes up. Well, I can't endanger this timeline of my work, even though this probably is well endangering that time, the timeline of all the work once you come to integration, which they haven't considered yet.
Hmm.
I don't know. What other ways does that show up? Maybe it does show up as, not my problem, or that's not my department, or something like that. But
I've heard that before. Definitely not. Not in like high performing teams like we had previously, but definitely in IT departments where people like a manager gets in place that is rather old school and like they are making most of the architectural decisions. They are like the manager. They like no decision gets made on that in their environment that doesn't have his source of origination, and so then people just kind of gravitate toward whatever they like working on. If they have some proclivities, they will just kind of do that and be like, well, I guess the database is down. I can't do anything. Not my problem. That's the DBA's problem or infrastructure's problem. It's like, well, is it? So I have seen that more than one place. That's really disheartening to be in there, and it made me glad that I was a consultant at that point where I could start stepping up and making noise and helping people try to pull people out of their comfort zones.
I don't know if you guys know the online presence of Reverend Geek, a guy named David Neal. But his tagline is, "You don't need permission to be awesome." And I've tried to pass that on to a number of people, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't need someone to give you permission to go fix this problem and just go do it. You don't need someone's blessing to go make this big improvement to our application. Do it. And I'm not saying like deviate from what the rest of the team is doing type of way, but sometimes people just need to be empowered to be like, oh yeah, that is a thing I could do. I love David's work. I love that he always ends his presentation with that phrase, because I think some people it's almost like they need someone. If you come from a work environment where you're told everything, it's almost like you need someone to tell you, like, you don't need anyone else. Like, you have to have that one last instruction that you don't need as many instructions anymore.
Yeah. Well, and Brock, you were talking about being a consultant as an agitator in a system that needs to face its headwind a little more.
Mm-hmm.
And David Neal is doing that in general by giving permission, by saying you don't need permission to be awesome, because people do need permission from something. Like if they're locked in a system, something has to give them permission to behave differently to change the system.
Yeah, well, and not to make this, not to go back too far in time, but like when John, you and I first became architects, we didn't really know what the bounds of our role was, and how we have grown, and it was really scary most of the time to just make changes and to say to go into a place and be like, yeah, this is going to be how it works because this is how it should work, and to have the confidence to just say to make that call. Like, wow, I imagine most of probably the first several months that we were there, every time we would make a decision, we were like ducking to see if we were going to get like get swung at, because people were like, well, who are these people? And it's like, no, like, there's a lot of confidence that has to come in with that, and the belief that, does this fall into our role, and does this fall into what, is this going to help and be the best thing for the company, and if in recognizing and having the confidence that management is going to have our back, and that makes a huge difference, and especially with our confidence. Like, once you know that you have that safety, like the motivation just runs wild, because suddenly, when you see inefficiencies or you see things that are not working the way that they should, you can feel empowered enough to make the change that needs to happen to rectify that situation. And people aren't going to come to you and say, well, why did you make this the call? I feel like freeing, empowering exponentially every time it happened.
Yeah, well, every time you stuck your neck out and you did get your head cut off, you get a little more confident.
That's true. You definitely get ballsy.
I remember, and there's something about placing the purpose outside of yourself that really, that's becoming a recurring theme in both my work and my personal life. In the original mandate with that architect role that we had, that all three of us had, that was brand new when we got it. I remember 4 or 5 bullet points, and I don't remember, I'd have to really squint hard to remember like the other ones, but one of them sticks with me, and it's the one I kind of pivoted all the other ones off of. And it wasn't phrased like this, but it was essentially make developers awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Stick up be an advocate for the developers. And when I used that as my pivot point, as in that architectural role, I was like, this is not about me. What would I do to make these other people who are, typing the code, what do I do to make their work, their lives better? And if I just followed that as the North Star, I felt like it led me in the right direction most of the time.
I just had this conversation in the last week and a half, literally that conversation with some of the developers I work with now. Like, if you have a problem and you let me know. I'm here to help you and to be awesome and to empower you. Like, if there's roadblocks, I'm here to remove them.
And instantly they responded with, well, I'm so glad you said so. Here's my list of things.
I wish. But
or was it kind of silent?
It was silent. But in the background, there was some people came to me and which showed me that there isn't a lot of confidence or trust, and that's okay, because I know how to build that, and I know how to embody that and show that as a I feel like we did that. The three of us together have done that so awesomely in our careers. Like, this is just, I'm doing it again. That's fine. But yeah, it was. I was hoping for some kind of talk, but I don't know if it's just that the people are too new, or the disparate areas in which they live
Okay, so but how did I know? How did I predict that? I wasn't just bullshitting.
Oh, I know you weren't bullshitting.
I
Because
knew that that's what your team did.
because this is how every um, invariably almost every team devolves into that there is some kind of status quo minima, I guess, that teams cascade into, and it takes noise to get it out, to get those teams out of that situation. And I told them, if like I'm here to speak up for them, and if them being awesome is worth more than me in my like my position here. If I have to fight and uh, then that's fine. But like I'm here to help them and make things better for them. So.
And I don't know if this is what you're going for, John, but there is a little bit of learned behavior there that takes some time. You just said, we would stick our necks out, and when our heads didn't get cut off, like that makes you bolder for the next time, right? And so Brock on his new team trying to say, hey, I'll fight for you, but people need to almost see that demonstrated before they internalize it.
Yeah.
Right. And it's not so much that they don't believe Brock. It's just like you kind of have to have.
They have no reason to, but
right.
It's not going to stop me. So,
but it'll be interesting to see how the team dynamic changes as you live up to what you've said, which having known you for a long time, I'm confident you will. But there's still that idea that like someone's going to have to come to you and say, I've got this issue. And then you're like, oh yeah, we can do this. We can figure this out. You empower them to figure, to solve that. And you buy emotional capital. And then that starts to like infect the whole team where like, okay, this is now a team where our culture is that we help each other out and then we trust each other.
Yeah.
We stick up for one another.
Definitely.
So Brock, in terms of, for somebody who might be listening, who maybe didn't have the whatever magical experience the three of us had like 10 years ago at doing this, but they're looking for like a way that they can, do this, create this environment for their team. You said earlier, like I know how to do this. I know how to do what sorts of things would you do? Like
one
tangible examples can you suggest?
Oh, wow, that's a really good question. And so I think a lot of it is creating a culture of sharing knowledge and a culture of caring and showing vulnerability. I feel like if there is something that I don't know and I can express that to the group and they can see, oh, hey, he's not this magic person, but he might not know this one thing that I know, but I know something else that they don't, and we can share, and having that camaraderie and building those ties is what I feel is some of the foundation of that. We've got to work toward trust, and we've got to work toward opening communication, lines of communication. And one guy that had talked to me, he's newer to the profession, but really smart and had some ideas. And it's like, this is great. Let's keep this going. I'm going to start talking with people and start getting start trying to make this some of these changes and yeah. So I guess that's where I would start.
Yeah, I think I mean, I'm just wrapping up with the team that I'm working with now, and I'm going to move on to another team pretty soon. And that's got me in the mode of, okay, what did I learn from working with this team that I can carry forward with me into the next team? There's at least 5 or 6 things like, well, don't do that, dumbass, and don't do that, and don't step there. And
Yeah.
there's actually a lot of things in a relatively new environment that I picked up. And that's my favorite thing about consulting is that the scenery changes, and in those changes of scene are a lot of you can shake a lot of peaches out of the lesson tree. One of them that's really resonating with me right now, it's very similar to things you describe, is like, you cannot work with somebody until you have until you have a human relationship with them, until you have a connection. And that connection becomes the conduit for their ideas and your ideas to safely pass. Otherwise, you're passing ships in the night, and you're like throwing shit at each other, and it's like, what the hell was that? And that's what the conversation is like before you have a proper connection with them. So introducing a change in behavior, let alone new ideas, the other way around, new ideas, let alone change in behavior, is not going to happen until you've properly bridged that human gap.
Definitely.
I was on a team a couple years ago, and it was the contract had just started, and for various reasons, there's a whole group of people that had never worked together before. It was a hybrid team, partially from the client, partially from the consulting company. But it was interesting because we had this Scrum Master, and he was a great guy. I didn't know him at all. Knew what he was doing, kind of talked low and slow. And for whatever reason, and keep in mind, this is pre-COVID when people still like drove into work. And he thought it was really interesting to know what day it was, right? And there's kind of a holiday for every day. You have the major ones, but then you get into like National Peach Pie Day and National Donut Day, stuff like that. And so he had kind of said a couple of times in the first week, oh yeah, and I heard him today on the radio that today is such and such a day. And we get to our first retro, and there were 3 of us that brought up is like, that thing that you do where you bring up what day it is, that should happen every day. Because that's like right now, that is our shared culture, is that we make a joke about that every day. Right. And I mean, it's like 2 minutes right at the end of stand up. Now today's National Donut Day. All right, everyone, let's go get some donuts. And we didn't usually. But it was interesting how like that bit of human interaction that had nothing to do with the project kind of became the first stake in the ground for our culture. And a culture that very much grew into a very loose, like working hard, but also allowing everyone to be a human type of culture. And it's interesting to kind of see like how it wasn't just one person, but 3 of us. Like that is a thing that we need more of.
I agree. I think we have one PM / Scrum Master that we used to work with. His name was Andrew, and well, I guess one of us still works with him. And he, but I feel like he brought a lot of the cultural intangibles to the organization, and he brought kind of the realization that we love doing software and we love building awesome things, but that doesn't bind us as like a cohesive unit. It is like the shared experiences and the ability to have a laugh or have a understand how to have a good time, I guess, that really makes a difference.
Well, let me bring up something else that Andrew taught me that has worked incredibly well. And if you're around Andrew for any length of time, you will see this. But Andrew compliments everyone around him.
Mm-hmm.
I remember the first time this really struck me. There was a cleaning crew that came through at night, and we would often pass like right at the end, the end of my workday, beginning of their shift. I remember one time, Andrew and I, we had just gotten out of a meeting, working through a little bit of a tense issue. And so we're walking out of the building. We see the cleaning crew, and Andrew stops. It's like, man, good to see you guys. And he knew their names. And I forget, but he's like, oh, good to see you. Good. It's like, man, you guys do such a good job cleaning the building.
Yeah.
And the way that they lit up in response to that, like just a subtle acknowledgement of a thing that was done,
that they existed, and that they do that they have an impact, or whatever they are doing has an impact.
Right. Knew their names, right? Humanized them and recognized effort.
Mm-hmm.
And once you
don't always do that for them.
And once you see that as a thing that you can do for team building, and I mean, Andrew does it unbelievably well with remarkable success in team building. But like, once you kind of pick up on that idea that like, yeah, we're a team, and I reckon, even in passing, hey, that you really facilitated that meeting well. Hey, that code review you did, that was excellent.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to be fake about it. Just, recognize what people do.
Do not be fake about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Do not be.
That's a third rail. Like in order to do what Andrew did in a genuine and thoughtful way, he had to be very observant. He had to pay attention to some aspect of that person's work or something that they did.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe even potentially something that is subtle and other people wouldn't notice.
Yeah, definitely.
To connect,
Yeah.
Don't do that badly.
There's a lot to kind of look up to Andrew and want to make that a part of you. He does that exceptionally well. And once you recognize that, you realize all of the missed opportunities that you have to thank somebody, or say, hey, or call someone else, say, hey, that was a good job.
Excuse me.
We need to do more kudos in our life. If you just forget about it, or forget about the bad stuff and only encourage the good stuff, you get more of the good stuff. Most of the time. Obviously there's limits to that analogy.
I'm not going to hold you to it, Brock. It's okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, I feel like we're running up against our time limit here. Any last thoughts or words of advice on building good team culture?
Be excellent to each other.
Party on, dudes.
What he said.
All right, Brock, you signing us off?
Yep. 3, 2, 1. Okay, I have to approve it again. Like, that's how we started the meeting.